Finally moving to the outside of the car in preparation for paint. There's a few little bits of trim that I've actually left on, and I was just thinking with these little chrome strips that it's easier to prepare them while they're on the car than trying to support them without distorting them off it. So I sanded the under edge of it with a rubbing block, and then using the air sander to do the facing edge. Blew off all the dust from that. I'm going to paint this black as it would have appeared on the SRs and indeed the 1979 Frankfurt show Opel Kadett Cup rally car. It did get sprayed black on another car that I had a number of years ago, but there wasn't a lot of preparation in that job, which was done in a hay shed about 20 years ago. So that's why it flaked off so much. So now I'll dull down that chrome good and get a primer and a top coat on it this time. Now I don't want to lose those little screws which hold the A-pillar chromes. So I'm just making a little pouch out of tape and taping that to it, and I'll put them in a labelled box. I actually have a spare in there. So anyway, I'm recording this so that I know where to look for that. Just the long one to remove on the driver's side, which is the left side of this car. Those are my arches, which I will be trial fitting anyway soon. Now, to take off this iconic Opel Kadett D Astra Mark 1 vent. The studs on these are very brittle and easy to break, and the trick is to try and get it to come out straight. So if you see there, I'm trying to get my fingers underneath the bottom so that, and look, I'm actually pushing it in and pulling it out at the same time. And the reason I say iconic is that it's been characterized on the latest Astra. And I just had a trial of one of those from Opel Ireland and had fun comparing it to some of our older stock. Now I'm removing these little studs, which are for a trim strip, which again wouldn't be on the sportier models of the Kadett Ds. And this area below that horizontal line will actually be satin black on this car. And I'm putting a little bit of zinc spray on to prevent flash rusting, and I'll be having to build up layers of paint on those so that there isn't a mark in the final paintwork. Now, unfortunately, the arches on this car have been rolled, probably for some Euro style rims in the past and some extreme lowering. So I'm going to actually have to pull them back out because I'm going to fit the SR body kit on this car. So yeah, just removing those plugs from the sill, which reminds me I must cavity wax this car as well now that all the welding is done on it. Now getting a little bit of an edge to get started on is a little bit difficult, using this little lever and then pliers to open it up a bit more. Bit nervous at this stage. I have a very complete car and don't want to do damage that I have to go into complicated repairs over. Spreading that out now with the lever in behind. There's a little weld here. I think that's a lower rear corner repair panel that was fitted in before me. Anyway, I'm getting it all out. and there's sealant and some filler around that I want to clean off. Mostly sealant, I think. Using a wooden block and beating it somewhat back into shape with a hammer, cleaning off some of the cracked paint. I ended up with a lot of little peaks in the flange from where I pulled it out, so I'm using this clamp to press it down, and this is quite successfully restoring the edge. I'm not massively worried about this edge because I'm going to be putting a wheel arch over it. This arch came from a rotten Kadett that I spotted in a field while we were touring around West Cork with my grandmother 30 years ago, and we actually went back, and I think she gave me the money to buy the car, which wasn't very expensive, and my dad helped with the loan of an A-frame to tow it home. That's the actual arch there. The thing was so rotten, the floor was completely gone out of it. I have a plank going across the sills with the seat then on top. The floor was gone out of it. I'm being sensible there now. I'm putting my seatbelt on. But I did actually get the thing going and knocked a fair bit of fun out of it. And I've saved all of the arches, the armature mirrors, and the rear spoiler from it. The threaded studs are very rotten, but there's enough of them there to mark the metal arch, and I can drill through and get the fitting position right. I'm using two of them as a guide just to get it into position. That lip there for that trim line on the side of the car is handy to locate it, especially because my arch isn't perfect on the inner edge. I got two holes in it now, and it clips into place. So yeah, I'm just scoring the others. I think there's two more on each side, and then two lower ones then as well underneath. To get an accurate position, I'm just putting a bit of tape on now. So I'll mark the tape and then drill. It's important to get it sitting comfortable so that it doesn't twist in the middle of the curve. So now I'm going to take off the studs that have no thread on them anymore, so I'm just grinding them off the grinder. I've thought of lots of different ways of doing this. People have bonded them on, maybe you'd put screws through in just beside these locations, but I want the holes on the car to be in the original position, because as I'm going rallying with this thing, I could be hitting branches in the forestry or bushes, whatever. They could get torn off, and if I have to replace them, at least if the holes are in the original place, they'll be able to go on if I am lucky enough to find replacements. I have a couple of spare anyway, so I'm just drilling through where the threaded bolt effectively was. There's a flat plate that seems to be embedded in the plastic, so I'm drilling through that. And I think it's well, I'm going to replace it with an M5 thread screw, and yeah, so I'm just torquing that. I drilled them out to 4.5mm, and this is actually an old broken tap, and I put a new point on it, and it's shorter than normal, which is handy, so I'll be able to put a thread without going too deep with it. Now unfortunately I did go through with the drill that time, but it'll only take a tiny little plug. It should still be one of the tidiest ways I can think of anyway to put this on, and that feels really good and strong. So to have that held in about 6 points would be really good, and that's as bad as it got. So I can put a little bead of sealant in there or something. If I was to bond it on all the way around, I was probably going to spill more sealant over the edges than would be sticking out with these holes anyway. So I think I'll get it fairly tidy. I managed to get most of them without going through. And so in this case in particular, the short tap is quite handy. So really don't want these taking just a light knock and falling off. So I got some tidy little short M5 screws. I'll locate it with the top one. And actually kind of handy that it went through, because I'll get an idea how deep these are going. There is actually 2 skins of metal here. The inner arch goes out to that edge, and so does the quarter panel. These were actually 12mm long, and they don't actually stick out too much at all. That's the shallowest one at the top, so I'll be all good for the rest of them. I'm just fitting these temporarily, make sure I got all my holes right. I didn't want to be putting these on and off the car with fresh paint on it, using a ratchet there in a tight space. And I am very pleased to see this car getting the SR look.